Okay, welcome back. And well, at this stage, I can tell you that our plans fell through for having Dr. Okwe Bamiwo with us. These things do happen from time to time. But Comrade Nelson Ekujimi is a friend of the house. He's very, very much in place in connection with this particular subject matter. He's a public affairs analyst as well. Good morning to you, Comrade Nelson Ekujimi.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning, sir. Well, no agreement thus far on the national minimum wage. You know how wide it is. You are a stakeholder yourself. So we're looking at the fact that we have a conundrum on our hands. 250,000 for labor, which people have commented upon. Labor is adamant that 250,000. They themselves are coming down from over 500,000 naira, and the federal government, as you know, is at 62,000 naira. Even that 62,000 naira, governors have said that even if it is 60,000, we can't pay. We can't pay. So weigh in on this impossible problem to solve because we must end up with a win-win situation. Somebody has suggested, I think it was Reverend Dominic, who you know very well, has suggested that if we're looking at between the 80 to 100,000 naira range, that might be more like it. But for labor to insist, I think Mr. George also said that it begins to have political overtones. Give me your view on this.
Well, thank you very much. The issue about the national minimum wage is one that has been with us all for quite some time now. And sadly, the organized labor made this seem as if it's a battle between the federal government and the organized labor alone, forgetting that we also have the state governments who are also employers of labor, as well as the local government. And we also have the organized private sector. As we speak, we all know for free, if you look at the allocations that comes to the states and whatever they are getting, you and I know for free that 60,000 naira is easier for the camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for the states to be able to pay that money. The present national minimum wage is still being breached by states. The 30,000 naira. Some states are still paying 15,000 naira or below. Even labor themselves attested to it. And for me, I think we must get one thing very clear. Is it that the issue of national minimum wage should be focused majorly on the government's angle? How about the private sector?
Yeah.
What happens to them? What is the conditions under which they are working? Would they be able to pay that amount of money to their workers in view of the economic reality? Because as the employee is groaning, we must also recognize that the employers are also groaning. Everybody is in this boat together. So for me, I think I want to toe the line of those who have come out to say, maybe we should allow individual states to decide whatever they want to pay and leave this matter, take it out of the hands of the federal government through legislation. We should take the national minimum wage out of the exclusive list. Let us take it to the concurrent list. Because as we speak today, a state like Edo said she can pay 70,000. Well, well and good. We are talking of a minimum wage. So if we see another state that says we can pay 50,000 naira minimum, then they will bargain for whatever they are able to afford. But for example, I looked at the allocation of those states, and I'm like, if after receiving about 7 billion naira from the FAC in a month, and you remove the allocation for the judiciary in the state, the allocation for the legislature in that state, then whatever is left, I can tell you for free, except we are not being realistic. It will take about 3 months allocation from the states to be able to pay the month's minimum wage of 60,000. That is a basic fact. So labor insisting on 250 or nothing, I believe strongly they are not being realistic. They know it's not sustainable. And if they have contrary facts, let them engage the state governments and let us put it to the public space.
Exactly.
Because you don't expect a state government to go and borrow to be paying salaries. At the end of the day, what happens to the dividends of democracy, to the ordinary man who is not employed, to the retirees?
Okay, the sound went there, but I hope you can still hear us. I don't know why your sound went. Can you hear us, comrade? Can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, cool. One, you know that Labour has also commented on that idea that states should negotiate their own situation and what's going to be comfortable. Labour has sort of kicked against that. He doesn't like that idea, but you're being reasonable. I mean, it's the only reasonable course, especially as they have said what they have said, that we know what our coffers are looking like, and we know that we can't pay that. And this is where Labour seems to be treading a bit on thin ice, in the sense that there are people. Mr. George echoed the sentiment this morning earlier when he said that if Labour continues like this, there's no how you won't think, is there a political motive to all of this? Because everybody can see the facts. The facts are before us. And you brought up very succinctly, comrade, the matter of, how about the other parts of our economy? How about the employers of labor? Businesses are in a very, very tight corner. Businesses are shutting down. Saying that, those ones that are managing to keep their head above water, which is not the same as staying afloat, but just keeping their head above water, you're not going to hit them with 62,000 naira. Again, they have begun to make overtures that we can't afford it. And yet we are told by, technocrats who know all about these negotiations that we must find a win-win situation. I don't know how we're going to find a win-win situation between 250 and 62. Not all parties concerned are saying that 62 is a good is a good figure. So really, it's been somebody, Reverend Dominic, I don't know if you had joined us at the time, was suggesting that maybe somewhere between 80 and 100,000 might be the figure. I quite frankly, go on, comrade.
Uncle Yori, governors have come out publicly to say they can't pay 60,000 naira. Reverend Dominic is suggesting 80 to 100. For crying out loud. You remember that in 2019, when President Muhammadu Buhari signed the current national minimum wage, the state governors refused to sign. They said they are not party to that 30,000, that they can't afford it. Yep. And as we speak, we can see that. So even at 60,000, the states are telling you, honestly, I hope Labour and I pray that they will allow reason to prevail. Whatever be the considerations that is fueling this agitation, it is not being realistic and rational. The states cannot pay that money. And even when you look at the states, should our national minimum wage be based on only government employees? What is the government producing, by the way? Shouldn't our economy be productively based and where people can earn money based on their production? So when we have a national minimum wage, it encompasses those in the public sector as well as in the private sector. It means that primary school in my neighborhood that has employed maybe about 50 to 100 teachers, depending on how large that school is also going to be bound by that 60,000 naira.
Yeah.
So are you telling me how will they be able to source for that amount of money to pay those teachers in view of the economic realities of parents, of whom a lot of us have been unable to pay our children's school fees because of economic challenges? So for me, I think Labour should be realistic enough to admit that, look, we have gotten to this called the sack. If we can't pursue this 62,000 naira any further, let us go back to the states. And even as at that, I think even the private sector made it very clear. They are bending backward to be able to offer us to pay 60,000 naira.
Exactly.
And I can tell you for free, a lot of the private sector employers will not be able to pay that. In fact, if I'm an employer, as we speak, let me be honest with you, I will either downsize or I will tell my staff, you can no longer work for 30 days. You'll be working on hourly basis.
Exactly.
That's the only way I will beat the system, because I can't pay that money.
Well, let me bring in
the economic.
Let me bring in Professor Edmund, who has called in from Enugu, I believe. Good morning, Prof.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Yori. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yes, Professor.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Yes, good morning. I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do my own quota. Yes, you remember that 2 weeks ago we discussed this issue of minimum wage. 2 weeks ago, you brought this issue of minimum wage came up in your program.
That's right.
And we extensively discussed the way forward. Before I dwell into minimum wage, about flooding in Nigeria, not just Lagos.
Okay,
flooding is peculiar. This time of the year is a flooding period. It's not just peculiar to Lagos. The problem we have about flooding is lack of environmental management. Lack of environmental management, both from the people and from the government. We know that this issue of flooding is a perennial problem. So we've not been proactive. We've not been proactive on this issue flooding. So, having said that, let me dwell into minimum wage. I've heard a lot of speakers this morning talking about when the government can pay or government cannot pay. Like I said, there must be a balance. If you look at the economic situation in Nigeria today, we are undergoing hyperinflation. Hyperinflation. No amount of money you give a worker that will take that worker go. Things are literally very expensive. Food items are very expensive, out of the reach of common man. So when people talk about the 62, we can pay, we are not going to pay, or the governors say that they allow us to negotiate, that is bunkum. Because we are talking about national minimum wage, not state minimum wage, national. So national minimum wage goes across all the 36 states and Abuja. That is minimum. That is national minimum wage. It is also in all the other climes in the world. They have their national minimum wage. So from national minimum wage, then states can draw. The state can either increase or at least remain at the base of whatever is agreed upon. Remember last 2 weeks, I said between 80 and 100, government should agree between 80 and 100. It's not too much. If you look at the type of life, constitutional life that our political leaders live, you wouldn't blame the more people for agitating for more. Okay, for instance, in our constitution, it is stated that Nigeria is a secular state, isn't it? Yori?
Correct.
Is a secular state, isn't it?
Correct.
How come that federal government subsidize pilgrimage with billions of naira? So these are the things that aggravate people into demanding certain things. You can't just subsidize religion. So somebody wants to go to Mecca to pray or to go to Rome to pray. Prayer is a personal issue. It's not a national issue. It's not a governmental issue. So that is by the way. Your guest there said that if he's an employer of labor in private sector, that he will not be able to pay that amount of money, that he will downsize or ask people to pay hourly. That is wrong. That is wrong. You cut your coat. If you are an employer of labor, cut your coat according to your size, according to your workforce. And we're talking about this a very serious issue. Minimum wage. If government can't continue to pay slave wage, they want to pay the slave wage. We can't continue to pay slave wage. These people we are talking about, they have families. They go to school.
Professor Edmund, you just suggested up to 100,000 naira is sort of all right.
Between 80,000 and 100.
You think we can afford that?
We can. Nigeria can afford that. Nigeria is not a poor country. If we manage our resources very well, we are not a poor country. We can.
Okay.
Nigeria is not a poor country.
Okay.
The problem we have is lack of management of resources. So if we manage our resources, we can pay. And let me divert a little. That Edo State Governor is talking about paying, that Edo can pay 70,000 naira. I don't believe in that nonsense because that is political gimmick. It's a campaign gimmick. It's a campaign gimmick.
Okay, Professor. Thank you very much for calling in. Okay, thank you very much for calling in, Professor. And just to say before I come back to Nelson El-Kujimi that we might be cutting off to an official flagging off of and groundbreaking ceremony in Abuja of the Abuja division of the Appeal Court Complex. But for now, we still are here. Okay, there you go.
We welcome you, sir. We thank you for making the time to join us. We welcome all of you to this functional and all-important official foundation stone-laying ceremony.
Okay, so just that's a snippet of that. As you know by now, please, those who haven't caught on to the idea, if you want to continue hearing this conversation, you can join us on YouTube, and our viewers in the diaspora, of course, there's been no interruption to their viewing. You could just quickly switch over to the YouTube TVC News channel and continue with this. Comrade Nelson, well, you just heard Professor Edmund saying in there that, well, as an employer of labor, employers also have some sort of a commitment, and cutting out is too easy. That's not the way to go. And as I said to him, Prof, do you think we can actually afford between 80 and 100,000, as he has suggested, and Reverend Dominic before him had suggested? And he'd say that, look, let's not kid ourselves. We are not that poor. We can do it. Look at some of the things that we're doing. Nobody would say that we are poor to be doing it. Do I have a problem getting back Nelson El-Kujimi? Okay, in the meantime, Mazi, we have a network.
I'm here. I'm with you.
Okay, you're there. Okay, one moment, sir. Let me bring on Mazi Okoroafo, who has called in. I'll come back to you straight after that. Mazi Okoroafo, how do we resolve the conundrum we have so that everybody is happy? Federal government happy, labor is happy.
Well, the only thing, how to resolve this problem of the whether wages or salary, whatever we call. You see, when you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, Peter Drucker, management scientist, he said, incentives are very, very important. Motivational theory is also very important for a staff to work well. Now, how will a staff work well? When we give that staff what we call a living wage. It's very, very easy. One, government should make sure that we have excess food supply. If you have excess food supply, have excess energy, have excess security, have the rest. Even you pay a Nigeria 40,000 or 50,000, it will be very, very complex, especially food. Stomach infrastructure is the major thing that is affecting everything of the sector. Because if the stomach infrastructure and the food stuff you get are not available, no matter how much you pay to Nigeria, it will not solve the problem. So government should know what they do. Now, there are grains in the market. What do we do? Because we lack what we call storage facilities, we don't have them. So that's what government should be thinking about. But even though we import anything into Nigeria, how do we cushion the effect inside Nigeria? Because if those things are not coming for people to not. Now, the local government authority and the state government, they have a lot to play in terms of this minimum wage issue. It is not federal government. Federal government may issue their own statement. What happens to the local government? What happens to the state? And the major problem we are facing is that the private sectors, they are suffering. Nobody's carrying the private sectors. All these private sectors, they suffer a lot. Can you imagine something?
Looks like we lost Mazi Okoroafo. Okay, comrade, coming back to you, the point that he was making, in addition to what you were going to comment on, You know, the government also has to come across with some of the things that actually have not materialized. When the president had said that they were working, you know, hell for leather to see how to ameliorate the situation. Take the CNG, the compressed natural gas that was supposed to, that hasn't materialized, even though they are at work. Even at some filling stations, I've seen the equipment that has been put there, but you can't actually pull up and buy CNG. They're still working at it. But please go ahead, comrade.
Yes, thank you very much. One of your callers, I think whether Prof also, said why Labour is making these demands for the 250,000 is because government is sponsoring people to Hajj or religious.
Well, it's showing other signs. It's showing other signs of a lack of poverty.
No, just hold on, please. I want to ask the private sector that employs over 90% of the Nigerian working population, are they also sponsoring people to Hajj? Is that the basis? When you are making demands, you make demands within the confines of the economic realities. We are talking about minimum wage. All the focus is on the federal government, state government, federal government.
Okay.
How about the private employers?
Okay, that's the point that you are making. The point that you are making.
Yes, the private employers are they are critical to the livability of the Nigerian people. We have a lot of small-scale businesses here and there who have employed majority of Nigerians. How many workers what is the population of the workers in the federal sector, as well as in the states? So if we put their figures together, they cannot match that of the private sector. So if you say, there's extravagance in the public sector, so because there's extravagance in public sector, you want a minimum wage that only the federal and state government will be able to afford. That's for those who can pay. But the private sector will be excused for. Will that be a law? Because I know if a law made in any country affects every strata of the society, it does not discriminate. So on this issue of national minimum,
your point is well taken, comrade. Yeah.
I think on this issue of national minimum wage, I think it is important for us to go back to the drawing board. Look at the average of what the states came up with and put it back on the table. That will be a national minimum. Anybody can go above, but that will be the minimum. But most importantly, like I have advocated, I think it is important for the national minimum wage issue to be taken out of the exclusive list to the concurrent list on the national legislation, such that states will be able to negotiate whatever they can pay. The other day, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the TVC went on strike for 2 days over this national minimum wage. We all know what the whole country suffered. They shut down the national grid for 48 hours.
Yeah.
What was the purpose?
It was more suffering.
What did it achieve?
Comrade, we're going to have to leave
what
it
did it
here.
achieve?
Yeah, comrade, I beg your pardon. We're going to have to leave it here. But I want to thank you very much, comrade Nelson Ekujimi, our public affairs analyst, for coming in on the program and, giving us the benefit of your perspective. Thank you very much. As indeed, we also say to Professor Edmund, Mr. George, Mazio Korafor, and a lot of some other people that called in. Thank you very much as well for calling in on both subjects, as a matter of fact, the flooding in Lagos and then the main subject, which is the conundrum that we have. So that's our program today. Do please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.